Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this shortened week and on Labor Day weekend. Hope you had a very good weekend and a safe weekend. And going into the weekend, we had a jobs report that a lot of people were kind of looking at, just sort of shaking their heads a little bit. Market didn't get hit too bad. We were down triple digits. We were down over 100, 120 points to the downside, which is really, let's be honest, that's nothing. Finished on the day down about 75 points. The NASDAQ, on the other hand, actually finished up in the positive. It was in a very tight range. I want to tell you, the NASDAQ, I think, give or take, call it 30 plus points of movement total, which is incredible. That's why, obviously, you take a look over at the VIX. As we price in the weekend, everything else, VIX was hanging right around that 16 level. It got up a little bit higher. It was right around 1640 or thereabouts when we closed the day, and that was just a little bit of that paper shuffling that you get at the end of the day. Oil was up over 70, actually did pull back. It finished right around 69. Where we saw a pretty nice move, actually, is that move in the 10-year, which was up a couple of percent, back up above that 1.3 area, right around 132. And also Bitcoin. Bitcoin just kind of teasing around at that 50,000 level once again also. By the way, volumes. Volumes, I bring it up every day because it's so important. 38.5 million contracts. We're talking about going into a long weekend. People traveling. We did see a lot of people traveling by air. We saw, I was looking at some of those TSA numbers, everything else, and yet we had an incredible amount of volume going into this long weekend. We had Tesla, 1.5 million contracts. We had Apple, 1.3 million contracts. Those were the two standouts in terms of volume, except for I got to point out one other thing, and this has been something that we have brought up on both here and at the halftime report, talking about energy oftentimes, but also specifically looking at CCJ. What a week that Cameco has had a lot of unusual options in there. Stock started off the week last week, 1780, finished that. It was actually up close to 2250 at the highs of the week last week. 630,000 contracts for this name. Gives you a little idea because this is not one of those names that is very often anywhere even close to the top 10, top 20 for a day or for the week or anything else. But it certainly did have some great option days as well as some of the stock days. I was looking, the last 2 days, it traded over 14 million shares of stock. It averages right around 3.8 million shares per day. Gives you a little idea of just how much activity we have seen in there and the moves and the fact that that unusual option activity did indeed sniff this out very, very nicely. It hit multiple times and they were right, they were right, they were right, and they were right. So that's something we always like to see when we're seeing that kind of option paper, something to bookmark and think about in the future when we see any more option paper there. A stock that didn't really have such a great week was American Express. It was as high as 167. It actually pulled back throughout the week. I think it was right around 159. It might be somewhere close to that today. I really wasn't paying as much attention to that today, but just looking back to last week and some of the performance. Moderna was up about 5%. That was a nice one. DocuSign had a really nice day, up about 5% following those earnings. Some of the names that were a little bit lower, you look at some of the cruises. Now, why were some of the cruise ships coming down again? Well, a lot of chatter and some of that angst and some of the nervousness about what's going on with the variant and the Delta variant specifically. But those two names down, call it somewhere close to about 4%. By the way, Peloton, again, beat up underneath 100 last week as it was just pulling back a little bit more and a little bit more, seemed on a daily basis. So we come into today. We get into a Tuesday. We start to get the cobwebs of the weekend off, right? And you start to take a look at things, and it didn't look too bad. It looked like the markets were actually up in the pre-market. We had the Dow somewhere in positive territory. It looked like early on, up about 40 points, got closer to about flat as we got closer to the open. Next thing you know, we're down 50, we're down 80, we're down 200, we're down, last I looked, right around 270 points to the downside. The NASDAQ, again, doing absolutely nothing. It was just hovering very, very close to the flat line, up or down, maybe 10 or 15 points at the most that I had seen. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. And I'll tell you what, you take a look at crude, once again, a little bit of pressure. It was down towards the low parts of 68. Last I looked, it was starting to get back up towards 68.50, but still off on the day. 10-year stands out big. That's up, call it 3.5%. 137 is the number we were seeing on the 10-year. So that you would think normally would really give you a nice boost to the financials. It really didn't start to boost much Although we did, as we got into the day, I started to see a little bit of movement out of JP Morgan, a little bit of movement of some of the other financials starting to catch up a little bit with what's been a pretty consistent trade, looking at that 10-year and looking at where the financials are. Bitcoin right around 51,000. Tell you what's up, VIX. The VIX is now pushing and fighting around right around that 18, maybe even a little bit through the 18 levels. We were right around 1760, 1780. We pushed up through 18. We'll see if we start to get a little bit more of a push, if we see a little bit more pressure on the markets, as they are certainly feeling a little bit of pressure today. Industrials, energy, those were some of the leaders to the downside early, at least. They're down about, call it, maybe close to about 0.5% or so. But not everything is getting pushed to the downside. Take a look at Tesla. Tesla up a couple of percent. Netflix up a couple of percent. A little bit of commentary out there about specifically about Netflix and giving that stock a little bit of a boost. We had some of that option paper last week. We have maybe a little bit more. I think that's going to be part of our unusual, at least right here. And we'll see what we're going to be doing. I will be on the halftime report later on as well. The S&P really getting dragged down along with the Dow. You look at certain names, Deere, Boeing, 3M, Honeywell, you get the idea. Some of that really starting to pull on the markets to the downside. That was what the acceleration we were seeing as we were down 100, then 200, then 270. A lot of that really coming into play. What wasn't going down and what continues to go to the upside, we started talking about the FXI. Now, I talked about this one on the halftime report for unusual option activity on August 20th. We had some great options out in September. They were buying and some pretty big size. They have consistently come back. They've come back. They've come back. FXI trading right around that 38.5 level, somewhere close to that. Today, we're sitting there pushing well through 42. Nice big move out of a big ETF that we talk about all the time. Some of those names, Baidu, NetEase, Tencent, all these various names, also obviously as they're part of that indice, but moving really substantially to the upside. But where did we see the option paper? We had seen it in the FXI. That really stood out for me. We even highlighted a little bit more of that FXI paper just this past week. I believe it was last Thursday. We were talking about seeing even more of that as those Chinese stocks finally started to show a little something on the turn. So, got a couple of unusuals. We'll get out of here. The first one's Netflix. The stock was trading anywhere between 594 and 601, but last I looked, it was trading even higher than that. 9,100 of the September 10, that's this Friday, expiring calls at the 600 strike. They started at around $4.80. They got up to about $8.60. I'm sure they're higher now, so that's just a warning that this stock has already made a really fast, it's just been an accelerated move to the upside early on. We also have another one, Tesla. Stock was trading underneath 755. It was around 753.77 was the print at the time. And stock was relatively right there. We had some buyers of September 10th expiring, the 755s, just out of the money. Call them almost at the money calls. They're basically right there. And they were 360. They paid all the way up to over $10. On top of that, we had another buyer who bought 15,000 of the September 10th expiring 800 calls. They were going for 25 cents up to about 85 cents. So just seeing some very, very decent size, very large size option paper going into Tesla as well, looking for that stock to maybe make another push to the upside. I tell you what, it's been an absolutely incredible run recently from Tesla, and it just looks like folks are expecting to see even more in the short term, because both of these options that I'm talking about and highlighting right now are options that we are seeing on the unusual options screeners that we've got. And I got to tell you something, very, very interesting to see this as that stock seems to be breaking out to the upside. So on top of that, we got one last thing, a little bookkeeping for you. The bronze package that we have talked about, it's going to be on the screen right now. The bronze package we have talked about, if you click on that link, you have an opportunity to join us in Vegas. We're still on. We're still excited. Everybody seems to be very fired up. I know people out there in Vegas have been very, very excited to see some of the crowds that they have been seeing. And I'll tell you what, the ARIA is a great place to have what we're going to be having, which is going to be an absolute incredible conference. Really looking forward to that. That's going to be October 1st and 2nd. So plan ahead if you'd like to join us. We really would love to see you there as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you on the halftime report. We got some unusual that's going to be absolutely mind-blowing I look forward to delivering that and talking about everything in the markets today as we're seeing the markets move all over the place. Have the knowledge, understand the derivatives markets. I can't tell you that enough. It's really, really important. Get your education anywhere. We'd love to have you come here, but you can go anywhere. Get it out of books, get it out of whatever. The derivatives markets is the place to be in the marketplace. Folks, have a great day of trading.